they get high on it. It's like a drug to them, a massive high. Why? Because states of extreme terror release into the blood an adrenaline. And it's that adrenaline that they get high on. And that adrenaline brings us to adrenochrome. That's what adrenochrome is. It's blood laced with this adrenaline, which these people are literally addicted to. And when I was looking at these ancient societies that were doing this sacrificial stuff in the open, I realized I write about this in the roadmap that although we hear about the pantheons of gods like the Greek pantheon and the Egyptian pantheon and the Roman pantheon, actually these pantheons of gods can be found all over the ancient world in all these ancient societies. In fact, these pantheons still exist in the belief system of Hinduism. And you then start to realize that although they have different languages and different cultures, so they call these gods different things, different names, they're actually the same gods. The gods, bunch of prats, that the elite today are doing their sacrificial rituals to are the same entities that they gave them to in the ancient world, because the timeline of the Astral is completely different to this one. And it's interesting. I was saying in the early 1990s that I felt that the laws of physics were actually computer codes akin to those that create virtual reality simulation games. So you've got the creators, and they write in to their game various rules, laws, and limits of what is possible. And I say that those laws, limits written by the game creators are akin to our laws of physics. Our laws of physics are actually computer coding. And it's interesting that when people have these near-death experiences, when the body briefly dies and they then gets revived, their experience in between, and there's millions of these experiences. I've watched and read endless of them in my research, with incredible common themes, by the way. The one thing that they say, the many common things they say, but one of them is that when they leave the body, they're in a realm with a completely different law of physics than this one. And what's possible there is very different to what's possible here. That's because this level of the simulation is encoded with these codes, which are what we call the laws of physics. And so you've got this non-human force in this astral dimension that is using this global cult to manipulate human society as it wishes. And there's a reason why they've created this simulation, which I'm sure we'll get into.
I was just about to ask you what's their motivation for this, and then what sort of agency do we have? Is it to expand our consciousness to be aware of this limit?
Once you do that, see, when I say the whole foundation of this is to control perception, I mean control perception on every level, from the perception of the reality that we're experiencing right across the board. Every aspect of perception they wish to control, and really they have to control to keep us in check, because they're relatively few compared with the billions of humans. So when I was to give you go into why create this simulation, and we can go into how it works as well. But in the early 1990s, when I was uncovering this cult, I realized that rich and famous people, many who were on the news constantly, were taking part in Satanism, in satanic ritual, in human sacrifice ritual. And you're going, what? Why? What's the game? And not just Satanism, but also pedophilia, because those two are connected actually by the same thing. And then I've met Satanists and former Satanists and people who've observed the rituals against their will as well, all over the world, from the 1990s onwards and onwards and onwards. And wherever you talk to them in the world, they talk about the same thing. It's that these people who are doing these satanic rituals, and the whole foundation of this global cult is based on Satanism and pedophilia, they are actually interacting with their gods as they perceive them. They're actually a bunch of prats, but they perceive them as gods. They're masters, if you like. And then I thought, okay, and I got detail on that, which I put in the books. But then I thought, well, they've been doing this all along, haven't they? I mean, look at the ancient world, and they were sacrificing people to the gods as a gift to the gods. Right. And then again, the question: what do the gods get out of it? Then, what's the gift that they're giving them? And what happened is that in ancient societies, it was acceptable. It was part of the life that you sacrificed young virgins to the gods. What's that code for? Children. And that was all part of their life. And then as humanity matured, they stopped all that and it went underground, and that's where it is now. All this Satanism goes on in secret, comes up every now and again to the surface, and then they bang the hammer down to cover it up. But it's the absolute foundation of this whole cult network. So, what was the gift to the gods?
Right,
and then. Through many other sources, I came to this conclusion. And one of the sources was a guy called Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe was a kind of a media executive at one point, but he had this gift of being able to project his consciousness into this astral dimension and experience it and see it. And he became very skilled at this. He wrote a series of books about it. And it got the American military got so interested in what he was doing that they started a project called the Gateway Project, Gateway Process, it was called, to study this astral projection, as it's called. And they got other people together who had this gift. And they did this study, and the CIA declassified the report on it by the guy who ran it for the US military some years ago. And when you look at what I've been saying, is that this reptilian force, it's not only reptilian, by the way, but that seems to be a dominant part of it, is operating in this astral dimension. Well, what happened in the Gateway process, this US military operation, is that the participants saw so many reptilian entities in the astral dimension when they were projecting that they gave them, in the Gateway Project, a collective name. They called them the alligators. Oh, I've seen some more alligators, sort of stuff. And what Robert Monroe was saying he learned in his astral projections, and I've had this from many other sources as well, is that these entities, these astral entities, are feeding off low vibrational human energy. And
Wow. So that's the gift.
that's the gift that comes in the satanic rituals, but it's also the gift that the whole of society is set up to produce. Now, this will explain a lot about why the world is as it is. First of all, um, it's not just any human energy that these entities absorb, because they are themselves in a low vibrational state. It's higher vibrational state than the human world, but in the astral world, they're still in a low vibrational state. And thus, if they're going to absorb this human energy, which Robert Monroe called loosh, the name he gave to it, then it has to be within the frequency band that they are. And that frequency band relates to low vibrational human thought and emotion. So it's well known in mainstream science that every time we think and feel emotion, we are generating a frequency. And that frequency relates to the nature of the thought or the emotion. So joy, love, harmony, peace, appreciation, respect, these are all high vibrational energies generated by states of mental and emotional being that relate to those emotions, those thoughts. This force cannot absorb that. What it can absorb is low vibrational energy created by fear, anxiety, depression, war, other conflict, regret, hatred, remorse, and resentment. All these low vibrational emotional energies, they can absorb them. So what you have is this global cult within our reality manipulating human experience. It's why we have all these bloody wars, to generate in the population low vibrational energy based on those mental and emotional states. And these entities are feeding off that. And so in the Matrix movie, which may have been apparent fiction, but there was a heck of a lot of things in there that were actually what's happening. And you had the Morpheus character, and he held up a battery, and he said, the Matrix, the simulation, is a computer generated dream world built to turn humans into this, a battery. And that was a profound statement of truth within apparently fictional movie. So this force, both the global cult and its masters in the astral dimension, have absolutely no interest whatsoever in a world of love and peace and harmony and respect and joy. They have no interest in that, because that's not their energetic source. The low vibrational emotions are. So that's what the kind of world we live in overwhelmingly. So then we come back to these satanic rituals. What are the gifts to the gods? Well, they put the sacrificial victim through a process to generate maximum terror. I don't suppose they have to try very hard given the circumstances. Maximum terror. Imagine you're a kid, oh dear. And what's happening is, if I look at someone and they're in a very extreme emotional state, I will see in their facial expression and their body language that they're in an emotional state. What I won't see, because it's outside of visible light, is the energy, the frequencies they're giving off that relate to that state. because that energy is in the frequency band of the astral dimension. So when these sacrificial rituals are happening, these entities oversee from the astral dimension the ritual, and they're feeding off this incredibly powerful and intense low vibrational energy called terror. And that's the gift to the gods. And at the same time, these Satanists within our human reality, they drink the blood of the sacrificial victim. And as people have told me who've witnessed this, and so you start to put these things together, and you realize that the whole thing is basically founded on creating constant events to put people in low vibrational states, which then can be fed off, and that these satanic rituals are also another form of very concentrated production of this low vibrational energy. Wow. And you start to see why the world is as it is. They have no interest in a world of love, a world of joy, a world of harmony, none whatsoever. No, that's not lunch. Start another war. And that's why if you look through what we call history, there's a lot more to know about that. We've had this constant conflict, constant war, constant deprivation, constant suffering among vast tracts of humanity. I mean, you look at the First World War, you look at the Second World War. It's not just the people taking part and death itself as a frequency of vibration. It's all the people back home worried if their loved one will return or not. Imagine the loosh, the low vibrational energy that will have been created in Gaza since October the 7th. And this is happening all around the world. And I'm banned from 30 European countries and Australia now, and many others if I try to get in there. But before that, I traveled really widely around the world since 1990. And you see the vast numbers of people, the great majority of people actually, are living very challenging lives, trying to survive another day, another month, or whatever, in terrible circumstances. And so there's all this challenge, emotion, a mental response, energy that's basically turned the earth into a vast battery. Producing energy for these entities to absorb, and it's one of the things, funnily enough, that I've written about over the years, and I do in the roadmap as part of that whole putting the dots together, is reincarnation, and this gateway process of the U.S. military. Kind of came to the conclusion in its report that reincarnation is actually real, because what's reincarnating is not the body, it's a consciousness. It's a state of awareness, a state of consciousness. Some people call it the soul, although that's only one level of it. And so you have this situation where, or certainly questioned in my mind, is when you leave the body, like in a near-death experience, or you leave permanently, what happens then? Are you then out of the simulation, out of the loosh production machine? Because if you were, because of what I just said about the challenging lives that so many people have, the great majority, if you left the body at the end of an experience of human, surely you would say, well, I'm not going back there.
Right.
Stop that for a game of soldiers. That's horrible.
I'm right. You gave me the experience of being a paraplegic for the last 60 years. Why would I want to go back to that again?
Exactly. So then I really got into this whole what the hell is that all about? And again, I write in the books in terms of the detail, but basically, what you have is another level of this simulation, which is the astral dimension. And the idea is that when consciousness leaves the body, it enters this astral dimension, okay, but they don't want you going any further because if you do, you're out of their control and thus out of their loosh machine. They want you to reincarnate back into this reality over and over again. So it's like a self perpetuating machine. And I set out in the books in detail how this seems to work, talking to people who've got memories and have experienced it and all that stuff. And that is that when you enter this astral dimension and you see the light or the tunnel with the light at the end, you think you're in some form of heaven because compared with what you've just experienced, it seems to be. But there is a whole system which ultimately this simulation is run by AI, a level of AI that makes human AI currently even look like the Stone Age. And you go on this, what the Buddhists call wheel of samsara, where you basically come out of the body, you go through a process and you come back in. And so they've set up this multi-level simulation system so that it's self-perpetuating. And the reason consciousness comes back in is because what it learns in its astral state is that it's got lessons to learn and it must go back to pay back its karma.
We hear this in the teachings of, or the research I've read, Journey of Souls, Michael Newton's books on reincarnation, and it's a common theme throughout all of the regression hypnosis that he does in his work. Thousands of people who are totally unrelated all say the same thing, that once they've left the body and they're in this astral state, they've sort of chosen to come back to fix or work on something that heretofore was a deficiency in the previous life.
Yeah. And basically it's a load of old crap. And I tell you what I've noticed. I can come to something else I've noticed in a second, which relates to it. But what I've noticed is the relationship between humans in the human realm and to authority mirrors the relationship of consciousness, soul, if you like, in the astral in relation to authority. So people look to authority in the human world to tell them what to think and to tell them what to do. And overwhelmingly, they'll get their information from those sources and they'll be guided by those sources. Oh, hello, doctor. I'm not very well. Please save me, doctor. And all these different institutions of authority. And then when they leave the body, this is a fascinating thing to me because one of the common themes of a near-death experience is when they leave the body, they say, it was amazing. I've never experienced anything like it. And then you say, well, you believe in reincarnation though now? Oh, yeah, reincarnation, yeah. So you must have experienced it lots of times then. So why have you never experienced it like this before? You must have done. And so that was my question. Well, how does that work then? And then I've come across information and talked to people who have a memory. They're not that many in number, but the common themes are very compelling. They have a memory of the incarnation process. They have a memory of the pre-incarnation process in the astral when they're about to come back. And they then have a memory of actually coming into the body. And what they talk about is that as you come in, you go through some sort of very powerful electromagnetic field that wipes your memory. Now, there are people, young kids mostly, that do remember previous lives in this reality, but they're comparatively few, and seems by about the age of 7, 8, it kind of disappears. But they do have memories, and they are absolutely phenomenally detailed. A lot of them. There's a guy I quote in my books, a guy called Stevenson, who was a psychiatrist, psychologist, and he set out to basically trash the idea that reincarnation was real through these kids who were describing previous lives, small kids. And what he did is noted what they said in detail about where they were in this previous life and what the background was and who was around them and what have you. And then he'd check it out, because a lot of them, the people involved, were still around, still alive. And he became so amazed by the accuracy of these kids and what they were saying to what he was checking out, even in another country or another town where they'd never been, that he realized that reincarnation was real. I'll tell you one quick story I tell in one of the books. There was this lad who said that he was formerly married to this woman who was much older by now, obviously, but he was a kid. And he said, "Oh, I was married to this woman, and this is where I swear I lived." And these kids are describing houses in other places, sometimes other countries, and they're describing how they're laid out, what the rooms are, etc. And they've never ever been there. They're only little kids. And so Stevenson took this guy this kid to this home of where he said he was married to the woman. And Stevenson was saying, the funny thing was, the kid was talking to the wife as if he was still a wife. She was still a wife.
Wow.
When she's a much older woman and he's a little kid. And it came to the point where they said to him, the family, well, if you say you were, previously one of us, where's your will? Because we could never find your will. And the kid went to, I think it was in the kitchen, to a floorboard and pointed at a floorboard. They took the floorboard up and there was the will. And so this guy, Stevenson, he wrote thousands of case studies of these people. So, but what they say is that when they come in, overwhelmingly, they pass through some kind of really powerful electromagnetic field. It wipes their memory, apart from the few, and so they go through a human life in a like blank sheet of paper state. They have no idea where they've come from. They have no idea where they're going. They have no idea why they're here. And so when they leave the body, and we can come to what death is in a second, when they leave the body, they're still in that mind wipe state. So they experience this astral dimension after they leave the body. And to them, they're experiencing it for the first time. I've never experienced anything like it. And you go up the tunnel. Obviously, if you're a Christian, you might see Jesus. If you're a Muslim, you might see another religious hero, etc., etc. You might see loved ones and all the stuff I talk about in the books, how they are projections. They're not real. It's all AI, basically, a level of AI that we can't comprehend even now. Wow. And they go up the tunnel still in this mind wipe state. And then what happens with near-death experiences is that they are told, it's not your time, you've got to go back. And it's so lovely at that point that often they say, well, I don't want to go back. Oh, no, you've got to go back. You've got lessons to learn and all that stuff. What they don't do is pass the threshold into the level of reality that's beyond that point of you've got to go back.